Welcome back to our channel. Here at the Center for Equus Coaching, we believe that partnering with horses can help transform the way we connect with ourselves, others, and the world around us. As you explore the videos on our channel, you'll get to know the instructors and coaches offering this powerful work. You'll get a behind-the-scenes look at a day in the life of an Equus coach, and you'll learn more about the programs and certifications we offer. I'm Travis Stock, one of the instructors here at the Center for Equus Coaching, and I'm excited to continue our Meet the Coaches series with the talented and amazing MaryCay Durrant. MaryCay is an Equus Coaching Master Facilitator who is on a mission to reimagine the culture of work and the cycle of burnout and bring the human spirit back to life in organizations. Oh, and she's also a generous friend and someone I deeply enjoy collaborating with. So let me introduce you all to MaryCay. Thanks for joining me, MC.
Oh my gosh, so great to be with you, Travis.
So, how did you even find out about Equus Coaching? Like, you had a career well before the Center for Equus Coaching came into your life. How did you find out about us, and what was your journey to get here?
It's so funny because I'm like, "Oh, you're telling everyone how old I am, Travis."
Oh, stop. I had a career before I found it too. Stop.
So I did. I had a almost 20-year corporate career, and
Hmm.
what's so funny is I came to it in a very roundabout way and often the way that our clients come to it. I was really burned out on my work and on the outside my life had all the trappings of a lot of success, and on the inside I did not feel very alive at all. And didn't know how to say that to anyone. And sort of serendipitously, in the way the world works, I found myself on a hot July afternoon in a Colorado plateau with 5 women I'd never met before and a herd of horses. And the woman leading the session walked into the circle. She was a little bit like a horse herself, shuffled in quietly, stood there, looked at us all, and said, "Horses never lie. Humans, they lie a lot, most terribly to themselves." And that was the beginning of a week of me learning from horses about the cost of the lies I was telling myself, and also learning tools for how to begin to live my truth more in my life. And I went back from that workshop and my life started to change. And sometimes it was in really messy ways. But as I started to live into the work and the values I really had, I knew I wanted to bring this to other people and felt like the world of the corporate workplace was so important because it was a place where people have so much power and influence over our lives. And I thought it would benefit so much from the gifts of what working with the horses could offer. And at first, I would find people like you, Travis, and hire them to do the translation. And eventually, what I found was it was insufficient to have a translator in those conversations. I wanted to
Mm.
do them myself. So I started experimenting and looking around at different places that offered this kind of certification. And I'll be honest, I've done several of them and have not found anything as powerful as what the Institute offers or as real as what the coaches offer. So I jumped in. And as you know, I've been a part of the community for, quite a while now.
Oh, I love hearing that. I mean, obviously, I'm biased and think our program is really good, but it's good to hear that you sampled different programs. You sampled the world of equine assisted learning, and you found something real here in a different way than you found in some of the other places. As I'm listening to you share, it makes sense to me like why ending the cycle of burnout is so important to you for others because you had a lived experience of it of yourself. When you started unpacking some of the lies you were telling yourself that led to that burnout, what were some of the kind of lies you uncovered that might resonate with other people as well?
Oh, you're gonna go deep right away, Travis.
You know me, come on. I only
I
skimmed the surface for a very short time.
I love that. I was lying to myself about what mattered to me in my work. So I was climbing a ladder and being performance-based in ways I didn't
Mhm.
actually care about. I thought the only way I mattered if I was perfect, that people would only like me if I was perfect. And I actually learned that that lie was the very thing that had people not like me. So I think the perfection trap was a big one for me. I felt like I had to keep up an image I think another lie I told myself was that I had to have a certain kind of marriage, a certain kind of family. There were a lot of things I thought I had to do to contort and belong in places. And so unwrapping some of those lies, unraveling them was really messy process. And yeah, and through that process of a lot of those lies, I really came to believe the line from the last lecture, that book around, when the author is dying and as a reporter asks him, if you had 3 words for your children, what would they be? And he says, tell the truth.
Mm.
And he says, if you gave me 3 more, I would say all the time. And I think that's, a lot of what the horses have taught me, that as messy as it gets, you build the capacity to stay in that mess. And what's on the other side is so beautiful. I couldn't even imagine. Not perfect, but so beautiful.
Yeah, that's that interesting tension for those of us that struggle with perfectionism. That's a common theme I talk to people here on these conversations about, and it's my own story. It's what I learned the very first time I got in the round pen with a horse was how much perfectionism and performance I was leading with, and how that actually got in the way of me actually building a real connection, or got in the way of me actually feeling the way I wanted to feel in that space. And the hard part for those of us that are perfectionists and like to perform is that growth is often messy, as you were saying. And to show up and be messy in the transformation, to not already have it perfect, to not go, okay, I see the insight and I've got it, I've locked it in, I'm never going to struggle with that again, it's really challenging to the ego to have that happen. And I just appreciate you sharing that it was even being vulnerable enough to share that it was messy for you in the process, because that gives permission for all of us to realize it's really human to have some mess while we're growing and changing. Like it's never a straight linear line from where we are to where we want to be.
Yeah, and that just like how the seasons come around again and again, I am so far from the perfectionist that I was 20 years ago. And yet every time I stretch into something new, boy, that little pattern shows itself and it's there to work on again. So it actually never, it never goes away. And it's one of the reasons I love a community like ours is that
Mm,
there's people who both challenge me, like you've held up the mirror and said, wait, what's really going on here, Mary Kay?
yeah.
But also you'll hold me in the discomfort of that growth.
Hmm.
And I think that's part of what we get to create once we commit to working through some of those performative or perfection patterns.
Well, that's so much highlighting something I think we really try to create here at the Center for Equus Coaching, because we're not just a training institute that's training people how to do this skill. We also are trying to create a community with a set of values, with a set of desire to support each other in the growth process as people. And I think one of the things you're highlighting on that I always bring into my coaching is that sort of we all need the right balance of challenge and support to grow. If we just give too much challenge, most people don't grow because they bail out because it's too hard, because it's too messy, it's too hard, it's too triggering to the ego, and we fail. And that nobody wants to fail. Nobody wants to struggle like that. But if we offer too much support, then nobody needs to grow and stretch out of the comfort zone because it's all done for them.
Mhm.
And so we need that balance. We need the mirror that's held up, and we also need the support underneath us to hold us as we make that shift and grow. We're lucky because as a community, we not only have each other to do that, but we also have the horses. They're not going to not hold up a mirror to us on how we're showing up and how we're impacting the relationship, but they're also not going to lie to us, as you said. They're also not going to put their agenda on us. They're also not going to try to manipulate us into doing anything. They are just who they are. And there's support in that. There's belonging in that. There's uh, just like a heart connection that's so powerful when you get into a relationship with them. So you decided to join our training program. What was it like to be a student in the Center for Equus Coaching? How was the training for you? Tell me a little bit more about maybe what you gained from the process.
Mhm. Ah, that's a big question. The process for me was, I enjoyed the style of the way the learning was in community and small groups. I loved that there was some of it that was done virtually and then a good chunk of it that was done in person. So I got to have the experiential and reflective learning. As you said, it was designed around building community, so there was learning together, which I always really value. So the process was, really worked quite well for me. I also found I was at that time doing a lot of consulting work, and so I had left the corporate world, so I was really busy with consulting. I also found the institute to be really helpful in helping me navigate, client demands and delivery of work while being a student. So I valued that as a busy person. I think the thing that really at the end of the day, I would say that I valued the most is that every single one of the tools, approaches, techniques, things that I learned and got to practice, I was given permission to make them my own.
Mm.
So I had started my childhood, I'm a person who grew up without TV. As a matter of fact, as Travis knows, if you give me a TV reference, I will not
don't
understand
don't
it.
waste your time. Don't waste your time with a reference with Mary Kay.
Yeah. Blank stare. But I
Uh-huh.
had the benefit of spending a lot of time in nature, not with
Mm.
horses, but in nature. And so for me, what I have loved about the tools is I've been able to take each of them and connect them to my love of nature and the living systems models and their patterns. I've been able to take them and integrate them with the consulting and leadership work that I do. And so one of the things I have really valued about the Institute is it's not here's the process or technique and mimic me, Travis, the instructor. But here's an approach, integrate it and make it your own. And we've never really talked about this, but my fundamental belief is that that there are so many different populations that we desire to reach with this work, and letting people make it their own gives us the ability to reach more deeply into the world and offer more of the gifts of what the horses bring. So that's, to me, at the end of the day, I think the thing that I've taken the most.
Yeah, that's what we really put a lot of effort into. We definitely have standards to our program. We want those that we train to go out and represent Equus coaching really well. So it's not like we don't have any sort of requirements for the certification, but we also are not looking to create carbon copies of ourselves.
Mhm.
And even in our instructor team, we've got 5 instructors on the program, and each one of us does it a little differently. And as you go to these on-sites, and get to interact with horses, you get to meet different instructors and see how they do it. And you get to see that we may have a shared sense of values and some of, like, the core principles of this work, but we show up very differently and hold it differently. And I agree with you. What that does is allows us to meet lots of different kinds of populations out there, where some of us wanna be doing work within family systems, others wanna be doing work in the corporate world. If some of us wanna be doing one-on-one sessions, some of us love group facilitation, and so we get to meet lots of different people because our own uniqueness gets to be a part of the skill set that we're learning as Equus coaches.
Mhm.
So, one thing I love to challenge anybody I talk to on this is that you and I are talking very easily about this work because we know it. We've lived in it, we've been it with it for a little while, but I still run into people all the time that if I say I'm an Equus coach, they go, "Huh?" They don't know what the heck I'm talking about. So, I always like to challenge people to share with us, how do you describe this work to someone who maybe has never heard of it?
I would say that for me, I never lead with the horse.
Okay.
So I'm always looking at, I had someone years ago say that I was a possibility pixie, and they did not mean it as a compliment.
A
I
possibility pixie, what does that even mean?
Well, that I was someone who, like, they would give you the rules, and I would say, "Oh, well, that's interesting, but can you see these other 15 things that are possible?"
Ah, got it.
And they wanted me to, like, stay in the lines. And, and then what I realized is actually in our world where people feel isolated, depleted, broken, insufficient, that tapping into the possibilities that they most yearn for and then connecting it to what dimension of the horses will most welcome them to take a step towards that possibility or yearning. And so, whether it's with a CEO, and you've done some work with me with corporate groups, I've had a CEO who invested bringing a whole executive team for 4 days with the horses, not because of who the horses were exactly, but because I could make the bridge between the possibilities she hoped for a team that was gonna go through a lot of change, and how the horses have 55 million years of navigating uncertainty and challenge by staying together, by trust, by authenticity, by accountability. And so I could bridge from that where she was at and the possibility she hoped for, and then how the horses would help with that. In another
You
in another case, it might be someone who's trying to find the confidence to pursue something that really matters to them and to really trust their heart, and so for them, the horse's heart that's 17 times the size of ours and is the space that they resonate from, their truth telling and that compassion that they have can be the encouragement for them to engage with the horse and start that journey. And so for me, it's about finding that connection is really the way that I lead into what the Equus works makes possible.
you mentioned earlier the language of living systems model. Is that an example of a living systems model to like sort of help them see the system that the horses have developed over that many years and like how they've navigated things? Is that what you mean by living systems model?
I think that's a really great example of a living systems. And again, just like with the horses, there's so many, our bodies are a living system.
Uh-huh.
And you think about how the organs each know their part and they're not the lungs aren't trying to tell the heart they're doing their part wrong, but they have a method of communication and accountability that we can learn so much from at the way we lead our organizations or teams. So I think living systems can mean that sort of that herd experience that you're talking about, or it can mean so many different things. And there's so many templates that nature offers us, and in particular the horses. I mean, they're my favorite part of nature to bring into the work.
Mine too. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, nature in itself is great, and then this actual relational being that's in front of us that believes in community, that has power dynamics, that has boundaries, that has, resource scarcity at times, like, they have to deal with some of the same things we do as humans living in our communities, and yet they just hold it so differently, and it gives us new models to go like, "Wait, was the way I was taught working for me, or is this lame? Do I want a different one?"
Totally, yeah. And, I will tell you a funny evidence of that that I have seen, I probably half a dozen times now, is that I'll do a session with someone, and sometimes because of the group settings I'm in, it's not someone that I'm even working with on an ongoing basis, and I have now literally multiple times have people come back maybe a year later, 2 years later, and they've gotten a tattoo of something that happened in that session as a reminder to them when they're not with the horses to touch back into that model that you're talking about so they can live from it regularly. And I
Mm.
just think, I mean, that's just the power of what these experiences are, that someone would do one session and say, I want to carry this with me for the rest of my life so that I can have a reminder in a world that isn't like the horses of what they showed me.
There's something so cool that you've kind of referenced throughout this conversation, which is it sometimes really just takes one time. Like the first experience with a horse can radically change your perspective and your desired approach to moving forward in the world. Doesn't mean that you know how to do it all the way yet. And it doesn't mean, as you said before, it's not going to be messy in the
Mhm.
middle of the transformation. But for many of us, it was for me. The very first time I interacted with a horse in this capacity, it changed the trajectory of my life. Saying yes to that experience turned my life in a different direction, which didn't seem so perceptible at first, but then the way that it deviated from where I was going over time was so powerful just from that one experience. It sounds like you've seen that with people that you've coached. It sounds like that was the truth for you when that first person told you that horses don't lie and people lie to themselves. Isn't it wild how this can be so transformational just the very first time?
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of a surgeon. So this is a surgeon who operates on hearts the size of walnuts. So this particular surgeon, world renowned for their work, and had had a very difficult set of experiences in medical school and some really very challenging things around power and oppression, and had been working for years in therapy on it. And then spent an afternoon with a horse and said, I healed more from that afternoon with the horse. Yes, all the therapy helped, and it still helps, but it's like those moments, it opens us up to a world that we have forgotten.
Mm. I can't tell you how many times I've also heard the same thing. They're like, "This is like years worth of therapy all in one session."
Mhm. Yeah.
It's powerful. I think it's that experiential and relational nature of it. It's not just us talking about the concept, it's our nervous systems are engaged. The coaching is at one level, the verbal coaching, the storyline, the meaning making, the thinking, but there's also so much going on at the physiological level underneath the words when we're engaging with an animal that size.
Yeah, and I'm gonna stretch it even further. Now, this is my possibilitarian in the moment, but,
Yeah.
is that I also think that in the same way things are happening at multiple levels in every interaction we have, I do think that there's something around the mythology of horses, that from the beginning of time, they have carried human beings and represented things that we could not access on our own. And I do think that there is something at sort of that spiritual, energetic, whatever word you want to use for the intelligence of life that creates things that even with all our technology, we still haven't figured out how to create as human beings. The horses live in that energy. And I think they are a bridge. And I just think that they're really bowing their heads to us to say, I don't have to stand here in this round pen next to you. I could
Mm,
literally get as far away from you. I'm stronger than you, right? They're at liberty. They could choose whatever they wanted. And instead, I see time and time again, even horses that have been mistreated by humans lowering their head and said, let me help you remember what you've forgotten.
mm.
Let me help you connect to this deeper part of yourself that you're yearning to live from.
Well, beautifully said. I get to witness your work when we collaborate out there in the world, but not everybody gets a window into that. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit more about what your work is looking like these days.
Question. I think for many years, I let the leaders who might hire me guide what work they wanted done inside their
Mm,
organizations and cultures. And I've reached this point, maybe it's age, who knows, but I've reached this point where I feel like I'm so committed to workplaces that honor the dignity of the human spirit and what is sacred in every human being. I believe fundamentally at my core that so many of the problems in our world are as a result of people having lost dignity in their work, that we treat people like machines all day and then expect them to go home. And of course, they go home and overconsume or over because they have to like build their core back up from the depletion of that work. And so I do believe that work was meant to be a part of our becoming, our potential. And I do think living systems can teach us how to create work that just like lights the human spirit up. And so, what I've gotten a lot more bold about is, and this is a stretch for me, as you know, is getting out in the world and sharing the idea and the importance of the human spirit and how the horses and nature can invite us into creating workplaces where they thrive. And I'll give you a recent example. I had a CEO approach me. She was one of the ones that had had the one time equine experience and wanted to do a couple-day retreat with the horses. And a few years ago, I would have said, okay. And what I said instead was, if what you're really committed to is a workplace where every human being is thriving and there's these things you're navigating, I would encourage a different kind of investment with your team and the horses and making a much bigger investment and really integrating what the horses offer into the daily work of the leaders and executives. And that bigger kind of engagement has made a more sustainable difference than just a nice experience that they went and had for a couple days, or that someone might live into inside, but don't really have the container of a community helping them fully express those insights. And so, I am moving in two directions. One is if I'm going to do work inside these organizations and with teams, I'm going to really press for how do we create not just an experience, but a whole wrapper that helps the leaders become that potential. And then I'm also really stretching, Travis, as you know, into sharing this message in places that maybe haven't had the chance to meet the horses or haven't had someone who's inviting them to think about the human spirit. And so it's uncomfortable for me, but I'm, stepping into getting out in the world, whether it's on podcasts or in conferences to really open up the possibility for people of what work could look like if we did embrace what Cahill Gibran says, right? Work is love made visible. What if work becomes something we fashion with the spirit of our breath and the essence of who we are? And we had the tools like the horses to work it out between us when it gets messy. Imagine what that would be like. And so that's sort of the what I'm stretching into right now.
Sounds to me like you're moving at the right moment where we are sort of in a very transformational, uncomfortable period around work. We can see how unsustainable it is in many ways.
Mhm.
And the fact that your focus is on returning dignity at work, I think is so powerful. I really want to pull you out a little bit more on how do horses help with that specifically?
Mm.
Like, how can a horse teach us more about the human spirit?
So I would say a couple of ways. I mean, first, when we think about the kinds of experiences we create for a group of people, whether it's a leadership team or a group of friends or family that come together, I think the first thing that the horses offer is an ability for me to actually get in touch with my own human spirit.
Mhm,
So in that mirroring, in the coaching that you were talking about, they begin to have us remember the part of ourselves that we've forgotten and to learn to honor it and have the tools for starting to live from that place. So I think they help us with that very first step of reconnecting and believing in and trusting that part of ourself in a culture that sometimes teaches us not to listen to that or that it's insufficient. So I think that's the first part of what the horses offer. But the reason why I think just a one and done is insufficient is then if we return to an ecosystem that is not actually honoring that or working with it or encouraging it, it becomes increasingly difficult to sustain it over time. So then I think the horses can provide an experience where we start to work in collaboration mirroring their models of how they work together as we imagine doing our own work. And it's sometimes messy and fun and uncomfortable to translate what we see them doing to how we might bring it into our work. But as teams do that for themselves, or as families think about how they're going to do that for themselves, they actually then make the translation in a way that they have a shared language and set of tools with each other and every group might find a slightly different way of naming what they've observed in the horses and felt, and then how they want to bring that to life for themselves. But as they create those templates, they now have a way of going back and saying, this is how we're going to work. And we've made a promise and commitment to each other that as messy as it gets, we're going to keep working on it. And then sometimes coming back to the horses saying, okay, it was working for a while, but we're a little messy. Can we get back on track can we go to the people who know the horses, how to be human, right?
uh-huh. Yeah, it's an excellent reminder. I mean, and especially in our Western cultures, we get fed and are taught to value like real rugged individualism, to pick yourself up by your bootstraps, to work on it yourself. And I think that reminder that we also live in systems. We have human herds that we work within, whether that's work or our families of origin or our communities. And it's not often enough for one individual to go and change and make a shift in themselves. If the momentum doesn't shift in the system, it's very hard for that individual person to hold their shift and change because the weight of the momentum of the system will overpower them most of the time. And so it's a really great reminder that this is one of those systems that we've been taught, that individualism, and yet horses remind us that they are both individuals and members of a herd. And so they can show us how how a change at the system level is actually more effective, is actually more where we can collaborate better, be more effective, grow in the ways that we want to grow, because now we're all having a shared vision and agreements about how we're going to approach it rather than counteracting each other's momentum by going in opposite directions.
It's totally right, and you actually just pinpointed something that I think I was not being clear about in my speaking, which is the
Uh,
human spirit is actually not individual,
uh,
right? We've been taught that human being begins with I, but what if human being begins with we, which the horses,
oof,
right? They live that.
uh-huh.
You
So beautiful.
and you can see it, right? I mean, any expression of the human spirit always is connected.
Mm, it's sitting in that is so lovely. What if it starts with we?
Yeah.
I love that so much. Oh, well, Mary Kay, I've had such a lovely time chatting with you today and getting to hear about your own journey through Equus Coaching, but then also the work that you're bringing into the world. Are there any upcoming offers that you have, or are there any ways that you want people to connect with you if they find resonance with what you've been sharing today in our conversation?
I'll offer a couple things. Thanks for asking. If people are interested in a monthly newsletter with practices to live from the living systems that we've talked a little bit about, they can go to my website and sign up there. So that would be one thing. And then I do have a couple of events with other members of our community. Allison Hunter and I are going to do a reimagine leading for women leaders in September. And then there's the fellowship that I do with Morgan McDonald Mannion that is around cultures and leadership that has an element of Equus in it, that's in Wisconsin in late October. So those would be a couple of events for public consumption that, golly, we'd love to have anyone come and join us.
Amazing. Well, I'll make sure there are links to your website and stuff on in the description of this video. She mentioned Allison Hunter. She was also a person I had a conversation with for this. So go back to our channel and find Allison's episode so you can get a sense of her approach to this Equus coaching work. Thank you so much, Mary Kay, for joining me and for sharing about you and your work as an Equus coach.
Thanks for having me. It's always great to be with you, Travis.
If you're interested in anything you've heard in this conversation, feel free to go to equuscoach.com to learn more about our programs and certifications. Some of those are programs about learning to offer this work, and some of them are more personal development. If you're just a person that's wanting to come and experience this, we have those kinds of offers too. So that's equuscoach.com. And as a reminder, keep checking out the videos on our channel to see more about our work, to learn more, and to find out how Equus coaches are bringing this work into the world.